Alrighty.
All right.
We're hooked up.
We're hooked up, ready to go.
Hi, welcome to the Scuttlebutt podcast. I'm Rich Mellon.
And I'm Sandi Mellon. And more tales from the trap line today.
Yeah, well, a little bit. We got some other information as well.
Oh, yes. Some good stuff.
One of the very first things I want to talk about, though, is that we are actually going to have our own coffee.
Yes. Well, our friends at Old Smokes Coffee approached us and asked us if we would like to do a brew of our own. So we're doing a brew of our own. But we're still, I think we've got two choices that are coming to us to choose from, right?
Yes. Well, there's no choice about how dark a brew it's going to be.
It's going to be an ultra dark.
Yeah.
Because we love dark coffee.
Well, a lot of people don't understand is that everybody thinks that when the darker the brew, that the more caffeine, but there's less caffeine.
Yeah.
Because the caffeine actually evaporates off as it's roasted.
I'm not sure if evaporate is the right word.
Well,
someone will call us on that.
I'm sure they will. And you can reach me at info@trappinginc.com and tell me all about it.
Tell me how wrong we were.
So Old Smokes does traditional coffee, which is just roasted over hot air. So like Sandi could be a coffee roaster. Lots of hot air.
Someone's getting coal in his stocking this year.
I'm going to talk about that right after this. About Christmas. You got a surprise coming.
Oh,
anyway,
good.
They do that, but then they do the traditional roasting, but then they do the smoke roasting. So what smoke roasting is that originally when coffee was discovered, and I don't know how many permutations it took before somebody decided how to make coffee into something edible, into the wonderful elixir we drink today, but was originally they roasted it over fires.
Right.
Okay, so you got a lot of the smoke flavor could be added into it, and that became a very, very big thing, which got lost when we hit the modern world, because the modern world, everything's right now.
Well, we want everything so fast, like you say, and now the faster the better, and you can roast traditional coffee using gas heat. I think that's what most coffee roasters use, or at least that's what Old Smokes uses.
Yep.
And they can roast a custom roast or whatever in about 20 minutes.
Yep.
And it takes quite a bit longer over the smoked
over the wood fire, yeah.
over the wood fire.
And it's a lot more because when they're roasting with air, I mean, they get also the chance to use the air to move the beans so they don't burn or whatever. Well, they can't do that on the fire, so they have to do it themselves. They have to be there.
Yeah. So it's like, and it's starting to be quite a craft, like craft beer, are popping up everywhere. And we went to a craft brewery in, I think it was Wisconsin, wasn't it?
Yeah, the cow one.
Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
You had the sampler pack and got wobbly on.
I had the sampler pack and was assisted to the vehicle later. Anyway, it was good fun. We were on our way to a trapping convention.
We had a blast. We had a blast. But the neat thing about the roasting over the fire and the slow roasting is that it roasts the bitter out of the bean.
Correct.
So your bean becomes very smooth.
Yes.
And he has like medium dark roasts and dark roasts and an extra dark. We're going with an ultra dark.
Yeah. And so alder is one.
One of the woods that we're going to try is alder.
Yeah, and the other is
mesquite.
Mesquite. So anyway, stay tuned because
we might ask for advice. We might do which ones you like better, a vote or whatever, or just use my impeccable taste.
Okay. More on that later.
Anyway, you can go to oldsmokescoffee.com. So it's OLE smokescoffee.com, and any order you make there, use our promo code Trapping Inc. All one word. Use our promo code and get 10% off of your order.
Yeah, and that doesn't include anything that we've got cooking.
No.
For the new brew, but they have a lot of really excellent choices there, and I would highly recommend that you try them out. So,
we enjoy their extra dark.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to the ultra dark.
We do.
So before we go on anything else, you mentioned that this is going to be. We look at the schedule on the big schedule on the wall there because our life is all charted, right? Uh-huh. Our life is is all charted. And the big schedule on the wall says that this is going to air right at Christmas.
Oh.
So we're going to go away for just a minute here. I'm going to inject a little piece of footage. If I don't get this done, this is going to look really stupid, but I'm going to inject a little piece of footage about your Christmas present.
I'm a little nervous, I gotta say. Okay.
Watch this. We'll be right back.
So, I had a hard time figuring out what to get the girl who has everything for Christmas.
You're buying girls with everything for Christmas.
Well, you gotta... I didn't get you a new door for the outhouse. That's not what the bow is. Open it up.
There's a glow in here. Sometimes, in the movies, when things glow behind closed doors are not a good thing.
Oh,
Cool. A heat lamp.
look at that.
That's awesome.
The girl that has everything as a heated lit outhouse now, huh? I couldn't think of anything else more perfect to get you, babe.
Okay, next year I'll make a list.
Well, that was kind of fun, huh?
Okay, I guess.
Next on the list.
Well, we did talk about NAFA, North American Fur Auctions, which
Yes.
I think most or many trappers in North America do ship their furs to the auction.
Or did.
So there were two auctions, both based out of Canada,
Yeah.
right?
Depending on the year, sometimes there were 3, sometimes there
Yeah.
were 4. But
But they're two auction houses.
2 auction houses, yes.
Yes.
For Harvesters Auction,
Yes.
which is the last man standing, and NAFA, which is North American Fur Auctions. During our last podcast, or a podcast before that or whatever, we talked a little bit about what was going on with NAFA. And I repeated some stuff that wasn't entirely correct, and so I want to get that straight now.
Yeah.
I was repeating what I was told, and since then, a even more insider reached out and got to me straight. We had been led to believe that it was guarantees, like auction, minimum bids, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That they were guaranteeing what they were going to get for their mink, and that they were dealing with the ranches.
Yeah.
And we thought that was what pulled them down. It was actually something called deferred funds. And I'd heard it before, but I thought I was talking again about this, the guarantee, the restricted or the reserve bids, right?
Yeah.
But no, there was a little bit to do with financing for the ranches, and that was with kit loans and with feed loans, which was what allowed them to then get their their young born and get them fed up to the size where they could pelt them out. But what the reserve or the deferred funds was, and that's where these kit loans and pelt loans come from, or feed loans, pardon me, out of this deferred funds. And what that was that in 2013, when NAFA dropped the hammer, they had a $900 million year. That was when the last hammer fell. And they were of the belief that it was going to...
That was back in 2013, you said, yeah.
Yeah, 2013. They had the belief that it was never going to end. And, of course, we live in
It's
oil
a commodity like anything else. And
well, we live in oil country in Alberta, and we've seen boom and bust, boom and bust.
well,
and at
so
the
many
time,
people said $100 oil was the new norm, and away we go.
Wow, and every time somebody says it's never going to end, I start squirreling away my nuts because I know it's about to end.
Well, we kind of try and follow the the rule of thumb of good investors who say when everybody is getting greedy, I cash out, and when everybody Warren Buffett's school of investing, and when everyone is getting out, I get back in. And it's worked really well for Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway.
Well, who was it? Talking about the latest bubble was the Bitcoin bubble, right?
Yes.
And somebody said, he was an investment advisor. He says, when your taxi driver is telling you to invest in Bitcoin, it's already over.
Yeah, exactly. And I know people who bought it at $25,000 thinking that it was just going to go. And I think it's somewhere, like it's not as bad as it was, but it's somewhere around $6,000 now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got way off track here.
That's the beauty of this. It's not like we're on a clock,
No.
other than how long the battery lasts.
And how long people want to watch. This is not an investment show, by the way.
No, but what happened was that they thought it was going to last for forever. This $100 mink was going to last forever, and at that time it was $30 or $40 to get that mink to pelt out stage,
Yes.
right? That's what they had invested in, and so they're at $100. They're making a tidy profit, and they figured it was going to last for forever. So I'm not sure how or why they started with this deferred funds, but it turned out to defer whether the auction offered this to them, or they just said to the auction, "Well, I don't need all that money right now," and whether that was a way of deferring.
So what deferment means is that the individual whose fund or company whose funds are deferred for payment don't pay tax on it until they actually receive the funds.
Oh, okay.
That's what I know in my world. They might have had a different arrangement with NAFA and whatnot, but anyway, it is essentially money owed to in this case it was the fur ranchers, and they elected to leave it in the NAFA accounts for working capital, and they were paid a higher rate of interest than that they would have gotten likely on any secure investment that they might have made outside of NAFA. So I think being that NAFA had been in business for so many years,
384 years or something.
I think they felt, and everyone felt that was involved in this particular venture or agreement, that the funds were very safe. But of course, I think what everyone who has any knowledge of the fur industry at all, since 2013, the prices have not been as strong.
Well, they keep going down a little bit. It kept going down until I think about 16 was when the bloodbath started. So what happened?
So in other words, ranched mink are not worth $100 a pelt any longer.
No, they started to drop. And we understand that part of it. Part of it was that there was this false economy that had been created in China. Especially because the people that were importing, I use the word loosely in air quotes, importing, because they weren't. They were actually smuggling it in.
Yes.
And they got caught for not paying customs and excise tax on it, and those people have gone to jail. So that part we had straight. And that was the end of that false economy. But at the same time, NAFA now was so married to that money. This is, once again, my feeling that, NAFA was so indebted to the ranch mink farmers, or they were so addicted to the money that was there, they really abandoned North America. Like, they did not advertise much in North America. Wild fur was just an extra thing to them. The folks that they were selling mink to in China, and that they didn't care whether it was ranched or wild, just that it was fur. Yeah.
So we've likened it in the past to the Walmart of furriers.
Exactly.
Or fur, as a garment, or as a quality item of some sort, whether that was a cushion or whatever.
It was high turnover, low per.
It wasn't of the quality garments that what we see. And a little plug for our very favorite furrier out of Red Deer, Sisson Furs. The quality of the garments that they stock there, and then of course Lyle is a furrier himself, and so he makes custom items like the beautiful set of beaver gauntlet mitts that I got for Christmas last year. I'm hoping that's what you all saw when you saw that little video clip, but somehow I'm thinking it's not. Anyway. There are entire malls in China, or there were, that were dedicated to only fur. Every store, and there was hundreds of them.
1,200 in the one I saw. There was 1,200 stores there, and each one of them was a single bay, front door opening, and it was like they all had the same thing. They had a mink coats hanging in there of different colors, but they were all the same, one after another after another. 1,200 stores in a city. It's not like it was Beijing or some city that I even heard of, but I mean, there's so many people in China. I mean, that I didn't hear about it wasn't remarkable. But that was just remarkable that there would be a mall that had 1,200 fur stores in it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where things were heading, and where NAFA was kind of putting all of their eggs in that basket, if you like.
Well, they needed to maintain that high turnover of, because they had all that fur that they were indebted to the
and they
to
had
the
all
ranchers.
that money that they were but slowly over time, cash flow decreased and profits eroded, and
to defend the bank that they were dealing with was the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and
so CIBC.
Yeah, a lot of people said that the bank was anti-fur, and that's why they put them under.
Yeah,
wasn't that at all?
No.
A bank would. There's not many things that a bank would cross off the list, but losing money is one of them, and so they would deal with anybody as long as they weren't losing money.
Now that's not entirely true.
Pretty close.
Banker. Anyway, it had absolutely nothing to do with CIBC having any ill thoughts or malice toward the fur industry. Not at all.
They had actually made a restructure, and then what happened was some of the ranchers wanted back at the deferred funds, and two major ranchers, between the two of them, were owed $30 million.
Yeah.
And that pretty much drained the deferred funds, and that happened in September, and that's why everybody's checks started bouncing.
Yeah.
Was that drained everything? There was no longer assets on hand, and what started the collapse.
Well, and so NAFA is in receivership, not likely to come out of it, I would say. And there are a lot of people, friends of ours, colleagues in the trapping industry who we know are owed money. I think our check was less than $100.
Yeah.
And that's not going to make or break us. It's just simply a write-off. But there are a lot more people that it has affected a lot more seriously than us. And then on top of all of that then is what is happening with the fur that is in the possession of NAFA or the receivers at this point, because those furs don't belong to NAFA.
Or the receiver.
Or the receiver,
Yeah.
by extension.
Yeah.
They still belong to the trapper who or fur buyer who sent them in to the auction. So we think that there is a movement afoot to try and rectify that and get those furs sold, but we're not 100% sure. But regardless, I think the biggest thing to try and give people a little bit of peace of mind is that it's the fur that's there cannot be caught up in this bankruptcy or receivership situation, because they were not assets of NAFA.
Exactly. Deloitte is the company that's doing the receivership, and Saga has now picked up the which is an major international fur ranching operation. They have picked up the kit loans and the feed loans, and they are moving forward to help the ranchers pelt out, and in order to try and clear up that
debt
there. There is somebody I know in the industry that is in discussion about having a fur auction. That would be the auction that the trappers have there, and that money would go back to the trappers.
Right.
It would not be captured
there would still, if there's an auction, you would still pay a fee of whatever. But that's how NAFA always got paid from wild fur before, was the auction fees that were charged. So look for more details on that as we move forward through all of this. But one other thing that came out of this, and it could be quite serious for people involved in NAFA from maybe the board, the management, or what have you. But there is an article that came out in, and you can look it up. It's www.fiod.nl/mink farms conceal millions in foreign assets. So essentially what FIOD is the Netherlands equivalent of the IRS in America and Canada Revenue Agency in Canada. So there has been an investigation underway since the beginning of 2018, so almost 2 years now, and there is a criminal investigation underway conducted by the FIOD that shows a number of mink farms probably used a structure that concealed revenue and avoided paying taxes. So there is a lot more to come on this, but it looks to be a very serious situation.
And while it doesn't name names, it says one of the facilitators of this structure was an international fur auction.
Yeah. So we'll just leave it there because I think to go any further on that, we don't know. We only, but it's published information, and you can go on that website again, www.f as in Frank, IOD as in dog.n as in Nancy, L as in Lima, and you can find that information on there. So I think there's still more to come on all of this, but regardless, I think most trappers who were owed money from the sale of proceed or the sale of fur probably are going to be out that money, but stay tuned. Maybe something miraculous will come out of it. I don't know. But the furs, we should be okay with unsold furs.
We're hoping. I know that the president of the Wild Fur Shippers Council made an announcement that, even after all the years of them denying that they were controlled by NAFA, he has said that all of the memberships in that were paid for by Wild Fur Shipper Council members and that are all tied up in this receivership as well, and so it's going to be something that we won't be getting back. You paid $100 every couple of years for membership in it, and so that's looks like that's lost. There was another IFF, is the International Fur Federation, which defends our rights throughout the world, and they get 1% of every hammer drop at all the fur auctions throughout the world. So that's
the gross amount of
as soon as the hammer drops, they get that 1% of it.
They are owed quite a bit of money.
2.4 million euro is the last number that I saw from NAFA. That $30 million that was taken in September last year was not even included in that list of just about $50 million that is owed all the other fur farmers and that. There's a lot of money there. So I don't know how they managed to do that after all these years, or how it went so badly sideways, but it just goes to show when somebody says it's never going to end, start running.
Pull your money now. Investment tips from non-professional investors.
From trappers.
Yeah, from trappers.
You're in good shape now.
Yeah. Got her down. Anyway, I think it's always best that people find their own information, but we're here to give you what information that we have gleaned out of numerous conversations with individuals who are a little closer to the situation than what we are.
Well, this information's all out there. Nobody just knows where to look.
Yeah.
That's the one thing about the internet is, everything is out there somewhere. It's just if you know where to look.
Well, sometimes you have to turn over a leaf or two to find it. So.
Yeah, it's
anyway,
mind-boggling.
Back to trapping, because we've since our last podcast, we have been back out and set more traps. And
well, we're now at the end of November, and we are about to start. In a day or two here, it will be lynx and otter will start, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But as far as our marten's been going, it's been pretty remarkable. Yeah,
we've had a really good go of marten, and in the early years when we first were setting up our line, and this line had been owned by or managed by an individual for 30 years before we got a hold of it. But I think just in his later years, there wasn't an awful lot more that was going on, and most of it was taking place not far from the cabin because the gentleman who owned the rights to trap there was slowly.
Dementia was setting in.
Yeah, dementia was setting in, and I think it just wasn't safe for him to be further away from the cabin than he already was. But regardless of that, we opened up a bunch of new territory, and we've taken quite a number of fisher over the years. But now the marten are really starting to come. So
the neat thing about the marten, though, is not the numbers. I mean, the numbers are pretty stable every year now. We've kind of hit a nice plateau that we take all the time. But it's the disbursement that's so cool.
That's true.
We actually took just about as far northwest as you can go on our trap line. We actually took a marten here last week.
Which has never happened before.
Never.
Yeah.
Like never. That is unbelievable. And that's so cool.
It is so cool because and that's I guess the great part about trapping is that you learn stuff about the environment around you. And then you start piecing things together about, what's happening. Why is it changing? Or why is there more of this and less of this? Or, when are the wolves coming through earlier or later? They don't live on our the wolves in particular don't live on our trap line. They travel through because there just isn't that great of an amount of big game.
Well, they don't know anything about boundary, and they need a huge area. I mean, what is it? It takes 20,000 ungulates in Alberta. It takes 20,000 ungulates, so elk, moose, and deer. It takes 20 of them to produce enough food for 4,000 wolves. Think about that.
20,000.
To produce enough food. So that means
wow.
You can maintain both populations at 4,000 wolves, but it takes 20,000 ungulates to do that.
Yeah.
So that's an immense amount of, they're eating a lot of food there.
Yeah. Well, and they're always on the move, the wolves.
We're over 24 marten now.
Yeah.
And the amazing part is, as I talked about in the previous podcast, and I don't think I've put up. I've edited. I've been so busy trapping, I haven't edited together the tip on judging whether it's male or female and how old it is on the skulls yet. But it's coming. It's coming. Honest to God, it's coming.
It's so busy this time of year, and then you throw Christmas in on top of it. It's always good fun.
We haven't worried about that yet. I mean, it's not quite December yet. I got about 30 days before I have to worry about Christmas. Anyway, we have found that as I've paid more and more attention to the split between my males and females, is that we are catching way more females than males. Like it's probably 2/3 female and juvenile.
Yeah.
Like over 24, over 2 dozen marten so far, and only 2 have been mature female. Okay, and as we talked about in the previous one, that you want to keep that mature female number at 40% or less. Well, we're nowhere near that.
We are well within that margin for sure.
So I don't know. Is this something that nature does in order to spread out the population? Because the females are what's so important for population.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the females that are wandering.
Very interesting stuff. Or we've just created an environment where they are more, well, I don't know whether they're traveling more or whether they're just not
more successful. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't had a lot of snow this year now.
That's true.
And
not really cold temperatures either,
which is good because if we had really cold temperatures, if we'd had 40 below with the little snow we got, we'd have had a lot of marten die.
I think so too. Yeah, they like to live under a layer of snow, and the fishers are generally more successful when there's less snow. So anyway, we have had some cold temperatures, and that's meant, thank goodness, that things have frozen up. So now when we drive across, where a beaver dam is, I don't have my heart in my throat thinking that we're going to fall through. Yeah. And that was with the Argo anyway. And now that you're on the snowmobile, I don't worry about him being out there, because when the temperatures get cold and we just have the one snowmobile, he goes. And the favorite time of my whole year is living at the cabin for the weekend. So
I'm still doing most of the trapping from the Argo. I have now battled my way down through my lynx line.
Right.
The middle of our if this square here is our trap line, except it would be perfectly square instead of rectangle, it'd be square. The vast majority of the middle of it is muskeg, and it's black black spruce and tamarack muskie. And that's where the cats are in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get out there and
Because I guess that's where the bunnies are.
Well, there's lots of bunnies there because you have patches of willows and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll have a patch of willows as big as our house, and I'll have one cat pen on one end and a cat pen on the other end, and you'll have two cats.
Yeah.
It's all about habitat, right?
Yeah.
But that stuff there, I mean, that's a long, long run. Some days are 170 kilometers.
Yeah.
And that you just can't do that with an Argo.
It's much more difficult. And then here, not that long ago, we had a big wind come through, and I'm not sure. We had a lot of rain.
Yeah.
The trap line got a lot of rain, and we talked at one of the last podcasts that we did about a lot of beaver dams blowing out and just being like.
But it froze in really, really high.
Yeah.
And that was part of the problem that we had with why it was hard to cross stuff and that, because there was still always current, because they were still running over the top. We had more snow than we actually have right now.
Yeah.
But then we got this crazy amount of rain.
Yeah.
And it made a mess out of my wolf stuff, and it made a mess out of my coyote bait, the one we got right here on the home quarter, because I had that all on rams, and they're all standing there with, I use a ram foot on them and with the spike on the bottom, and they're just standing there with that rain coming, and everything fell over. Mm-hmm. The coyotes had a free pass while we were gone.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. But that big rain, big wind that I started to talk about, we had a lot of rain this summer, and I'm not sure whether it was just the ground saturated or whether the wind really was that strong, but we had a lot of big trees blow down.
Well, the worst part was you weren't with me. Where were you? You were gone off banking or something.
No, I think it was just after we got back from Mark's place, and we'd missed a check. So you went out right away, and I stayed home with the dogs.
Okay, that's what it was. But yeah, I'm out in the dark.
Yeah.
And, because I had very, very limited amount of time, and so I didn't have anybody waiting back at the cabin for me, and
the days were still getting shorter then.
So I took to chasing, going through the night and that, but I would go down and I would come back on the trail, and there'd be a tree this big falling over across it.
Yeah.
That's a creepy feeling.
Well, especially in the dark, because, the machine is loud, and you don't necessarily hear if there's cracking or anything. So, yeesh, just not a good situation at all.
No, I ended up cutting a lot of stuff out of the way there, but it just one of those things, That's why
you carry the power saw with you.
Always have a chainsaw, always. But we've as I said, we've got just about all of our Fisher and Martin is out now.
Yep.
And I've got out a whole bunch of mink sets, and it's really funny because the mink sets are really successful the first week that they're out, and you set them on a beaver dam, or you set them on beside a creek or whatever, beside a undercut bank on a creek, that kind of thing. So because they're going to travel on the ice is where the mink are going to travel, and it's strange. Like if you take a beaver dam and you always want to set it on the top. So you got to find where the center of that dam is, where there's water leaking. You have to stand there and listen. And with my hearing, that's not so successful anymore.
We're not going to talk about that
because they're going to come up and they're going to be searching for that running water, because they're going to try and get back under the ice that way.
Yeah.
So that's where I put it in the box, but I put it on top of the dam, and the reason for that is because if I put it down below, that water that is running over that might start to overflow down there, and it might freeze in my catch, or it might freeze in my box. Yeah. But I had one, and this was really cool. You'll see it on the show. But I had a mink box right down on the beaver dam, and well, this is where the beaver cut down all the trees this year. Yep. Went crazy there, and then we had all those trees. We had the chainsaw out of the way, and so I had
that was the day I thought I'd never get fed.
You were getting a big lip that day. You were pretty. Well, we were catching so much fur, and it was like you were at the point where I don't even want to see anything anymore.
We have to get out and film it. Anyway,
I had the mink box down on the beaver dam, and I had a marten box just right up on the bank on one of those downed logs. And I get there, there's a marten down on the dam, and there's a mink hanging up on the tree.
So completely opposite, right?
But when we start getting this time of the year now, I don't get mink on the dams and along the creeks as much anymore. They still travel there.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but I will catch them in the marten boxes now. They'll actually go climb the tree and
So strange, hey?
yeah. They,
We mentioned going trapping with Mark, and that's an entire show that we're doing with Mark. Mark Montsebraten is a trapper from the Carrot River, Nipawin.
well, he's north of Carrot River and,
Right.
and east of
Nipawin.
Nipawin. He's right at the
Saskatchewan.
beginning of the Cumberland Delta.
Right.
Okay. Now, the
Which
Cumberland
is-
Delta is made up from several rivers, but the biggest is the Saskatchewan River.
Yeah.
If anybody's ever been into walleye fishing, you've heard of Tobin Lake. And Tobin Lake
Is a reservoir.
is a reservoir that is made on the Saskatchewan River, and that is actually on his trap line. And
Yeah.
so they make power there all year long, and the water keeps the river open for about 20 kilometers or
Yeah.
12 miles, something like
And
that.
it's not very far from his cabin. It's like 800 meters or
Yeah.
something from his cabin. So anyway, we were approached in Yorkton earlier this year, and there was a gentleman that asked us if we would be interested in trapping or meeting a blind trapper.
Yeah.
And that just sort of jumped right out at us as a really good idea because
How can you not? I mean, how can you not?
it's quite a story,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So that's how we connected with Mark. And I hope he's okay with it because we plan on visiting him more.
I know you're fascinated with the native remedies and with the chaga
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. If I go there when there's it's
Well,
liquid, I'm going fishing, man.
We can go fishing. That's not a problem. But anyway, Mark is legally blind. He has 6% of his vision, and it's primarily it's a macro.
It's retinosis pigmentosa or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so most of your vision, most people don't understand, is that you have a great big blind spot in the middle of your eye that you have to stare. Your brain makes up for it. But you can find it by staring at a neutral background and moving your finger across and your finger will disappear. And so most of our vision is actually peripheral vision. And on you and I, well, me for sure. I don't know about you, but
Here it comes.
We have more than 90% of our peripheral vision available to us.
Yes.
He has 6%.
Yes.
So he's like looking through a cardboard tube out of a
And
out
I'm
of a
not
toilet
even
paper
sure if he
roll.
has that much.
Yeah.
It's like it's very apparent when you meet him. One of the nicest guys we've ever run into. And anyway, so we were over in Saskatchewan. I think it was like the
Couple weeks
last
ago.
weekend of November.
No, it would have been middle, second, third-ish, somewhere in there.
I think it was the 22nd, 23rd that we
Yeah.
were over there.
That's
So
okay.
it was the end, just like you said.
You bankers.
Anyway, we drove. It's a long drive from here. It's a good 8. How far is it? About 12 hours, I guess. 12 or 13
No,
hours.
it's more. It's 14.
Yeah.
14.
And we stopped and saw our daughter and her family along the way on the ranch, and buzzed off and went over to the Carrot River, Cumberland Delta. It was a beautiful place, and it was very mild. The temperatures were very mild, and we had lots of fun. We stayed at the cabin, and
I thought one of the neat things was the delta was formed by the retreat of the Laurentian ice shield. Okay, I looked this up.
good.
I had to. I'm into this stuff.
You are.
Kind of geeky that way. I heard that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, as it retreated, of course, you realize that we get a lot of our geologic formations and that are formed by glaciers. And one of them is a moraine. And there's several different kinds of moraine, but one is that is on the perimeter. And what it is as the glacier melts and recedes, you have all this water running off. Well, it carries everything that's been carried in that glacier, in that ice, all that sand and dirt, the silt, glacial till, all comes up. And with the case of an edge moraine, well, then it produces this edge, or now in modern day, it's a ridge. Well, this ridge runs across his trap line, across the river and everything, and that ridge is where most of his trapping takes place because the animals focus on that. It's a change from swamp and muskeg
Yeah.
There's birch.
Yeah.
Birch and poplar are hardwoods.
Yes, and there are so many birch trees on that property, and that's where chaga comes from.
And
So,
it's just one of those things. It's one people are always saying, well, where do I set a trap to catch this on my trap line? I always say, how well do you know your trap line?
well, yeah, and look for the changes. Look for
Yeah.
I mean that means a lot. We've talked about it on coyote shows before, where if you're setting footholds, look for the change in terrain or environment.
Crops even.
On crops, because you'll go from a hay crop to a grain crop, and there's always that transition in between the fields, and so look for those kinds of things, because the animals just kind of naturally go to those kinds of things. But yeah, it was very cool, and we spent a couple of days with him. The weather was mild, which was good. But he has a helper now to drive the quad, because we were on quad. They had more snow there than we did, but the trails are pretty well used through there by him. So his helper, Brad, very considerate young man.
No kidding, yeah.
Yeah, he, when you're riding behind somebody, you generally have to look out for whatever willow is coming your way or whatever. And Brad just always was very good about making sure that he cleared the way, because he knows that.
Well, most of us guys, we just duck and the guy behind you gets it,
Girl.
Oh yeah, you've been taken care of. You've been pampered your whole life, girl.
Oh. Pampered.
Yeah.
That's what we're calling it. Okay. Anyway, Brad is a super nice kid, and we really just had lots of fun over there. So you'll watch for that on an upcoming episode.
Well, my favorite part too, he's into everything. He's into chaga and wildflower honey and wild rice. And
wild rice,
he got some leases, and so he plants wild rice in these leases, and then he says he goes out to do some harvesting. The guy's blind, okay? And he says, I did it the traditional way with the canoe and bending the stalk over and beating it. And he says, it's harder work than it looks. And I keep thinking to myself, he's blind.
So anyone that tells you that they can't do something, I would, point them to Mark Montsbrot and say, can't ain't a word.
Well, and he did really good on the marten and fisher while we were there.
Yeah.
But every time he's setting up a trap, and honest to God, guys, we've all caught ourselves with traps. But he sets it up and puts it up there, and the guy is blind. And I said, Mark, that's the first I ever seen anybody set a trap by Braille.
Yeah.
That's
but
true.
but when you get into a rhythm, and I see you do this all the time. And a lot of people will call in or write to us or whatever and say, you never took the
safety off.
The safety off or off the
springs,
the springs, and it's just a fluid motion, but it's all in how he puts it in and takes them off all at the same time. And so Mark has been very good at developing his own rhythm, and that's how he sets the traps. So, how can you can't argue with that. And he had a lot of success doing it as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Very, very good. Very good. He was a wonderful guy.
The other thing that he does is he taps birch trees for sap in the spring. So I'll be on his Facebook page, and we'll figure that out, because he gave me a tap. So all I have to do is find a birch tree, and we don't have any on our property here. But
we do, actually.
Do we?
Not very big ones, but we do.
Well, we might have to start with a small one just to see how that goes. But anyway, I think we're probably going to do a little bit more about that on some future shows, because I am really intrigued with Indigenous medicines.
Well, he wants us to come back in the spring.
Yeah.
Because in Saskatchewan, it's legal to trap bear.
Yes.
Actually, you snare them.
Yes.
You don't use traps, you snare them. And he has an order from a taxidermist for 6 bear for this spring.
Wow.
And so he'll set up some bait sites, and we get there, then open the snares, and that could be quite the rodeo. I'm not sure that I want to have the camera in my hand when the blind guy's trying to shoot the bear.
pretty sure the gun's going to be in somebody else's hand other than Mark's, but I get your point. Anyway, we've got so much fun stuff going on. And honestly, you know, the more people we meet, the more people we meet. And you know, it's starting to become a really cool thing, the number of people who have something just a little bit different to offer to us, and for us to be able to share that. And believe me, they want to share it. And I think that's what a lot of trappers are. I mean, we've talked about this before. You know, somebody in Wisconsin or Minnesota or whatever isn't going to be trapping where we're trapping.
Nope.
So to tell people what we're doing, if it just helps you think of things a little differently or look for something a little bit more specific when you're setting your traps, whatever. But more than anything, it's showing that trapping is normal, and it's part of the ecosystem, and what we're doing is real. It's not put on. Like,
absolutely.
You know, there's so many that are.
Here's one of those things. Most people that watch the show know I make my own lynx lure. Yeah. And I make it from the intestinal tract of the lynx. Yeah. And they keep asking me. And finally I was
paying attention.
Well, this starts at about Christmas time every year. I start next year's batch.
Yes.
Okay. So right now I'm doing the final grooming of last year's stuff.
Right.
So I can set up my lynx line. I'll start setting up my lynx line in the next couple of days. Yeah. But I realized, I'm looking through it, I'm stirring it, and I realized by the hair that's in there, it's like, my favorite lynx, the ones that I'm picking to do this with, have just ate a rabbit.
Ah.
Okay, because I'm stirring it today, and it's like, what's that? You know, it's going around on I got a mud, a drywall paddle on the on the drill, and so it's going around. It's like, what the heck's that? Here, it's an ear. It's a rabbit ear going flop, flop, flop around. So, and I realized that, you know, when you get a lot of coyotes or wolves or lynx, and they're dead when you get there, of course, because you've snared them, and they have green belly.
Yes.
Well, what that is the enzymes in their belly kept going.
Yes.
Because they're plumb full of meat.
Yes.
So that's what that is, and that's the ones that I always pick are the ones with the green belly. So it's not every lynx that makes a good makes good lure, and I wonder if it's the mixture of the rabbit meat in there with the lynx meat, or if it's just the rabbit meat that's important. Now, I don't know.
I don't know, but again, it's paying attention to your environment and whatever is going on. So that's really cool. And that'll be you I believe be doing a bit of a segment or a how-to or something on making your lynx lure, right?
I should actually open one up that's full of rabbit.
Oh, sure you should. I'm not going to, no.
See if I can find the ears like I did today.
Good.
But I mean, it's funny. It's like one of those things. It's like you say, when I'm setting the trap and I don't even think about, my hands do it all. I've never even thought about it. People ask me and I say, well, just take the innards out and let it rot down over the summer and stir it every now and then. Like, it's really easy. But I just realized today when I'm stirring, I was like, oh yeah, I don't use them off every lynx. It's just the ones that have the green belly, because that's the one that's full. Yeah. And it's got meat in there.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, there's so much, and there's so much unknown, so much to learn. So if we can shortcut that for people, that's really cool. And speaking of people in general, our Amazon Prime numbers are way up again. Yeah. Which is really cool. Yeah. And our Facebook pages are growing. There's the group, which is a closed group, Trapping Inc. Yeah. And you have to ask to join it, but as long as you've got a picture of a fish or some hunting or something on there, I let you in. And we really encourage people to be involved in that one. Share what you know. Other than if it's your neighbor trying to compete with you on a piece of property, maybe you don't want to share with him or her, but for the most part, trappers really, really just want people to know that it's
cool?
Good.
You know what's really cool is the number of families.
Yes.
The number of young kids that are out that are being brought back up in the life of trapping. And we encourage, share everything, please. Share our YouTube, share Amazon, just keep spreading the word. Because the more people...
Spreading the truth, really. I mean, that's the only way that we're going to rise above some of the nonsense that's out there right now is for people who even aren't in the trapping industry, they don't trap or whatever. But if they know what the real is, they aren't then easily swayed by someone who is an anti and truth doesn't have anything to do with what they're trying to deliver out to the public. They just always want the nasty, and we're all about the real, and we're just having a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely, having a lot of fun. I really enjoy hearing from you folks. You can reach us by email, info@trappinginc.com. And we are on Facebook pages. We're on Instagram,
so there's the group.
Twitter.
Yeah, the group.
All that stuff.
Twitter, there is the page, Trapping Inc. TV page, which we would just like you to like. And apart from that, we really enjoy the feedback we get. We are so very grateful for the people who watch us and spread our name around and tell us nice things. It's really rewarding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you've had fun. We've got to get going. I got to get. I'm headed to the line tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it has been a blast as usual. And maybe we'll see you down the line.